Last weekend, the New York Football Giants made 6 selections in the 2017 NFL Draft. Now that the dust has settled and the draft pundits are either holding their heads up high or licking their wounds, it's time to move forward. On this week's episode, Brian, Bob, Rich, and I will be analyzing and discussing the New York Giants draft class, how they fit, and how soon we expect them to contribute. We'll also touch on players that were passed over, undrafted signed free agents that may make the team, current players that could be on the hot seat, and any missing links going into training camp. This is the Big Blue Huddle post-draft wrap-up podcast. Okay, so today we're going to discuss the 6 picks of the Giants 2017 draft. We have Bob. Say hi, Bob.
Hello.
Rich.
Hello, everyone.
And we have Brian.
Hello out there.
Okay, so let's start out with the 6 picks. We have first round draft pick is Evan Ingram, tight end from Mississippi. Second round pick is Dalvin Tomlinson, and he's a defensive tackle from Alabama. We have the third round pick, Davis Webb, quarterback out of Cal. And fourth round pick is a running back, Wayne Gallman out of Clemson. And we have fifth round pick, Avery Moss, defensive end, Youngstown State. And the sixth round pick is Adam Biznawadi, offensive tackle from Pittsburgh. So let's start out with you, Bob. How do they fit with the team's long-term plans and their current style of play for the Giants?
I believe that they get about a B or a B plus in the long-term plans area, and as far as style of play, I think they're going to get an A or even better. I think some of the complaining about the draft, why didn't they do this, why didn't they do that, was related to the fact that the Giants try to stick to getting players that fit their style, the scheme, and also that fit in the management team's long-term plans for the Giants, because that's part of their job, is to manage the money and the players to see that they never have a lull. And Ingram is not a perfect need pick, but he's a guy that's going to provide what they were missing last year on one of the things they were missing last year on offense. Tomlinson is a guy that plugged the hole left when Hankins went with the Colts. Davis Webb, I'll skip for a minute. Gallman is the running back to help with. He's a very he's a running back that knows how to do everything that a running back should know how to do, and so he's a plug and play player that will give them the running back variety that they've been missing, I believe. Moss, he may or may not make the team. He's definitely a pass rusher. He's going to have to learn how to play the run. And Biznawadi, he's basically the only actual left tackle, other than Wheeler, who is a free agent pickup that they got after the draft. And these players, I believe, all have a shot to make the team and fit in right with the flow of the Giants that's been set up by Jerry Reese and his management team. And I'll stop there. I'll just say about Davis Webb, and I'll talk about him when we at some later time.
Okay. Brian, what's your take?
I'm pretty much up there with Bob on that. As you know this, these other two fellas I don't think do know it. I never posted my mock. But I actually got 3 out of the top 4 Giants picks correct. And since I didn't want a quarterback, you can figure out which one. But that being said, that doesn't make me smart. It's kind of like being lucky at the track. because we all know that the draft is a crapshoot. I tweeted that out. Ed gave me a like on that. I absolutely loved the Evan Ingram pick. He gives them a different dimension to their offense that I don't think that the other secondaries in the NFC East will be able to match up to. He's not an inline blocker, but he's a very good blocker. Kerry gave me this stat. He had 59 knockdown blocks last year at Ole Miss. So it's not like the guy can't go after him, to use Kerry's term. So I love Ingram. Dalvin Tomlinson, I posted up a link from BBV on him. And the man is an unbelievable renaissance man. I stopped counting at 12 the different attributes and accomplishments he's had, any one of which would make a parent very, very proud. I'm just, really like the Tomlinson pick. Davis Webb, we're going to skip right over that. Gallman, very good running back, gives them the kind of guy that they were looking for. Avery Moss and Biznawati. Moss gives them a shot at a pass rush. Biznawati was very highly rated going into the season. Kind of dropped down a little bit. I think there was an injury issue there, but as Bob pointed out, he's a left tackle, and we're kind of thin at that position. So they worked to swap to snap him up as he was the best left tackle that was left. So I think that it's a pretty good accomplishment. I give a Giants I give him an A minus. It would have been an A, and that's why it's not. You can go back around 3 on that, but like Bob, I'll hold off on that comment until we get around to that subject.
Okay, thank you. Rich, what are your comments on?
All right. On Ingram, I think I want to look a little bit. I always try to look at how are they going to fit in the team. And Ingram, I don't have any really current giant or past giant that would compare to him, but Jordan Reed, the tight end, H-back from Washington, is probably the best comparison. I think this year in his role, I think he's going to be a backup to our 33-year-old Brandon Marshall. Marshall had some injury issues last year. He's 33 years old. I think that, you can't count on him being 100% healthy. And if he goes out, you're back to that.
Right.
Eli's looking at all his receivers being just 6 foot tall. So I think he offers up some nice backup to Brandon Marshall, who also came out today and said he's only planning to play 2 more years. So, here's your other big, tall, wide receiver. I think he can take the top off of defense going straight up the middle with that 4.41 speed. And, it gives him a little more dimension in terms of doing some 4 receiver sets or 2 tight end sets. As far as Tomlinson, I think he's an excellent replacement for Hankins. He's almost like a Hankins clone, although if you use the old young Elvis or fat Elvis analogy, it's the young Hankins before he put on a little bit of weight and sort of lost a little bit of his quarterback sacking ability. Davis Webb, I guess I'm in the minority. I kind of like him, and I think that he's going to, I wouldn't be shocked if he makes it all the way up to the number 2 in camp. I don't think it's what I expect, but it wouldn't shock if he actually pushes and becomes in backup this year.
Mm-hmm.
I think almost certainly he'll be the number 2 quarterback going forward. Gallman, I consider him somewhat of a slightly better Derek Ward. He's sort of the can-do-everything running back. He's just going to give you carries. He doesn't have breakaway speed, but, I think his strong suits are, I see a lot of patience in his runs. A lot of young running backs just charge the line. I think he has the patience to set up blocks and look for what he can do. He's also got a nice jump cut. Moss, he's very raw, but he's got all the tools to be a good backup defensive end who could rotate in and give some pass rushing down. Like I said, very raw, maybe a 4-man's Justin Tuck. And Biznawati, Jerry Reese compared him to David Deal, and he's a very smart gentleman. I believe he was an academic All-American, and he's very hard-working, gritty. He could be a David Deal type tackle guard combination.
Okay, thank you, Rich. I'd like to touch a little bit more on Davis Webb, but maybe not now. So let me just give you, I guess, my take on this draft. And I'm looking at this as the Giants needed to improve their offense, and this is what they did. Maybe not necessarily the offensive tackle position or the offensive line, but with the picks that they did pick with a tight end and a running back, the backup quarterback we'll talk about later. I think Evan Ingram is going to make a very, very big contribution on this team. Maybe not all this year, but I think we'll see him for many, many years to come. And you did mention Brendan Marshall is only playing 2 more years. He should have a very productive year. Hopefully he stays healthy. Hopefully he doesn't have a lot of drops, which traditionally that's what he's had a problem with that. But I think they're looking to get this offense off and running. If you take a look at the free agents that they picked up at the end of the draft, after the draft, 11 of them were on offense. And they did pick up, a few wide receivers, some offensive linemen. There's an interesting fullback pick. We'll discuss that later too. But I think they felt that their defense was strong enough, and they did replace Hankins with Tomlinson, who's, like you said, very similar to Jonathan Hankins. But this is a guy who could also play the 3 technique, and he might fit better. But they need to stop the run because that's what Dallas has done very well. And then I take a look at what did the other teams do, and they're looking to exploit the Giants somehow so like the Eagles, for example, they picked a defensive end, 2 cornerbacks. I think they had an idea of what the Giants were doing, and they also picked up a safety and a defensive tackle. So they're looking to keep up with the Giants offensively and still keep the Giants in check, because Giants have 4 really good offensive weapons right now for receivers, and they have a couple of strong running backs. And if the offensive line does gel, with the Giants doing so well on defense, I think they want to keep up. And same thing with the Redskins. Their first pick was Jonathan Allen, who fell to them as a defensive end, and then an outside linebacker and a cornerback. Those were their first 3 picks. One of their 4th-round picks was a safety in Montel Nicholson. And then the Dallas Cowboys picked up Taco Charlton, defensive end, 2 cornerbacks next in the draft. So I think that they're looking at each other and what they need to do, because every team plays each other 2 times. So that's 6 games, so important that you really need to dominate those division games. So that's my take on that. I'd like to touch on the quarterback thing. I'll give you my take on it. I think that Jerry Reese and McAdoo, I think they're looking at Eli as they're not quite sure. I think based on their comments, they feel that he needs to have somebody like to compete with, somebody that he's looking over his shoulder, that he needs to stay on his game. I believe that they were not 100% happy with Eli Manning last year. A lot of the reasons were not his fault. But I believe that they feel that some of the reasons that the offense didn't take over had something to do with Eli. They also know that he is getting up in age, and only they know if he's diminished a little bit in his skills. I haven't seen it on the field at all. I know some people claim that they've seen it. Some people say no. But I think they looked at this Davis Webb pick as somebody who could be developed into a very good NFL quarterback, and they didn't want to pass on him, or they wouldn't have picked him in the 3rd round. They would have waited till next year, just by the fact that they did that. Bob, what are your comments on the Davis Webb pick for quarterback?
Okay, I'm the logical guy to go next, because I don't know if you followed what I wrote on the bulletin board, but I believe that there's another possibility. And the other possibility is that the Giants just have a long-term plan for quarterbacks, where depending on the length of the current rookie contract that the backup quarterback is playing under, they will pick a new backup quarterback every so many years, because they have the good fortune of having a starting quarterback who never has gotten hurt, luckily, and he's been on the team a lot of years. Okay. And my theory is there's a possibility that in addition to what you said, or instead of what you said, they decided it was time to get a replacement for Nassib because obviously they're not going to re-sign him, so it was time to get another quarterback. Why in the third round, not the fourth round? Well, because I looked at who was picked after Davis Webb, and they picked him at the 23rd pick in the third round, and there were 43 picks in round 3. So there were 20 more picks after their pick in round 3, plus they didn't have they had a low pick number 34 in round 4.
Good point.
So there's 20, it's 30, it's 54 picks in between. So they had to decide how they were going to maneuver themselves into position to get a quarterback. And I just think that if they really felt Eli was losing it, they would have fought with Kansas City or somebody to get up in the first round and get the guy that they certainly wanted. No matter what they tell you, I think they had Webb probably in the second as a second-round pick. But in any event, they had him behind at least one other quarterback. And the guess is Mahomes because McAdoo went down there to see his workout, and McAdoo didn't even talk to this guy. So there's two ways of looking at it, and I think we both stated our case for, and it could be a combination of both, or something we've never thought of.
Well, to move up,
think.
they would have to have given up a third-round pick, so they would have given up their first and third and taken somebody else's first. Yeah. So
to get up,
they would have
round.
lost the pick, and I don't know. Do you think Mahomes would have been that much of a better pick than Webb? And Mahomes beat him out in Mahomes beat him out in college, but he really didn't.
I question all of the quarterbacks in this draft.
Okay.
I think maybe there's one guy, and it's going to be somebody nobody was talking about, like Peterman or somebody else, like Tom Brady or somebody that comes out of nowhere. I think the rest of these guys are not going to have a shot, although, God bless them, and I hope they all have good luck, but I don't see any of these guys as being a future NFL genius quarterback.
So do you feel that Davis Webb as a third-round pick was a better investment than Mahomes, where he was picked as a first round?
Yeah, if they could have got him in the fourth round, it would have been even better, but I think they felt that there was no way. Like I said, there was, whatever I said, 50 picks or something before their next pick. So
you like it? That's a good move then, to pick him in the third as opposed to Mahomes in the first.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Rich, how about you?
Well, I have a bit of a different take on Webb, and a little bit of it's reading the tea leaves. I think that that you look at the comment that Ben McAdoo didn't speak with him, and I have to think at that point that means that the Giants had probably mid to high second round grades on Davis Webb, and that they predicted, these quarterbacks tend to get taken a little higher than their grade. I think they figured he would go low first round, high second round, and that's why they really did not expect him to fall to them. So they went and, they did not have Ben speak to him because they didn't anticipate he'd fall into one of their windows, as Jerry Reese would say. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, he has said that, Tomlinson was the highest graded guy on the board, but as we know, it doesn't mean he was the only guy graded that high. So I think what happened was he was graded up there, but they needed Tomlinson to fill that Hankins void. And when he fell to them on 3, they were very, very happy to grab him. He was the best fit. He was actually probably the best need fit at that point. If you look at the guys taken after him, there's not a lot of impressive prospects that came off the board after Davis Webb.
Absolutely agree with that. Yeah, I checked that too, Rich.
Yeah, and I think that the thing about him is he's got great intangibles. He's got a great work ethic. He's got a strong arm. He's athletic. I mean, he's one of the top athletic quarterbacks. And
a New York personality too, right? He's a guy that he's a guy that would definitely fit with his personality in New York and his poise.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and he's got time now to learn what Eli, and he's got the And here's something that you got to remember: when you draft a quarterback, even if he just sits on the bench, as soon as he becomes the number 2, your typical backup quarterback costs you somewhere between $2 or $3 million a year in cap space. at the third round pick, Davis Webb is going to cost about $500,000. So each year he'll save the team $1.5 to $2.5 million a year being the backup, even if he doesn't see the field.
So Evan Ingram, the first round pick, would you agree, Rich, that that was a pick not of need, but best player available regardless of need? However, the second round pick, because I'm reading into what your comments were, Dalvin Tomlinson was a pick that was a need pick, but also best player available, a combination of both working together. Is that what you meant by your comment?
Yeah, it's kind of funny, Ed, because, I was thinking about a lot of this in preparation, and, I probably wasn't as disappointed with the Ingram pick as I started looking at how this board, looking at mock drafts and how this looked board and knowing that, Jerry Reese loves clean picks, meaning that there's no mental issue, character or mental issues. There's no physical. They fit all the size, speed, weight, dimensions. There's no question marks in their playing. So, there wasn't a lot of players that were going to be that ideal need versus value. Everyone loves that when it falls just right, where you get that really great player that fits a desperate need. But watching how, the odds of how that draft was going to play out, I didn't see that happening. And I think Ingram was a nice pick. I mean, it's more maybe of a could use the improvement versus a true need, but I think he's a good player. I think he'll be a good weapon for the team, and how good a weapon will be on the coaching staff. But I think, and as far as Tomlinson, I think that was that ideal, connection of value meets need. I think that he was, as Jerry Reese said, is their highest rated player, and it was in a perfect position of need.
Okay, all right, thank you, Brian. What's your take on this?
On exactly what, Ed?
On the quarterback Webb, that pick at the third.
And Davis Webb. Okay. Well, my own feelings aside, I wasn't watching the draft live. I was following it on the board and chat room. But from what I got was the Giants, when that pick came, that selection came up, they took no time at all. They ran right up to the podium and put the name in. So it's pretty clear to me that the Giants weren't just looking to draft any quarterback, but that they had this guy targeted. And when he fell that low to them, what they thought was that low, they snapped right at him. So from that point of view, I don't disagree with the pick. I thought that maybe we came a year or two early as far as quarterback goes, but I'm not running a football team either. As far as the player himself, he's a pretty good player. I mean, he's done some good stuff. He went to Cal, so we were staying with the Giants take, their propensity of late to, take smart players. He certainly has a great work ethic. He's not afraid of New York. So we'll see how he works out. But, Eli is, just turned 36. So I think that, overall, it's a good pick. I just didn't think this was the year to pull a trigger on that. I was hoping they were going to take an interior offensive lineman. Isaac Asiata was still around then, and, he may have helped out. But let's see what happens here.
Oh, well, Brian, you're a cap guy, okay? And Eli Manning's contract ends in 2019. And that year of 2019, his dead cap hit, to my recollection, again, I don't have anything in front of me, is a $5 million cap hit, which is not horrible to eat if they had to, for something, if something happened. They're definitely, I guess you would agree that they're not going to go for a quarterback next year. So what do you see happening this year with quarterbacks? They have Josh Johnson, Eli Manning, and they also have the quarterback from the Jets. What's his name?
Geno Smith.
Yep. And now they have Davis Webb. So I'm thinking that you have Manning and Webb definitely. Will Geno Smith go on the pup? And what will they do with Josh Johnson? How many quarterbacks will they carry this year? They're going to wind up at some point, I think, carrying 3. Do you think that if they look at Webb and would they just go with 2 quarterbacks? What do you think they'll do?
Oh, no. First of all, you have to go with past history, which is not a big body of work as far as Ben McAdoo as a head coach, but he carried 3 quarterbacks last year, none of whom was a third-round pick, a developmental rookie. So they absolutely will go with 3. Webb will be the He's the quarterback in training, so to speak. So it comes down to Josh Johnson or Geno Smith. Smith has an injury history. We don't know where that's at. On top of that, Josh Johnson has a history with Mike Sullivan, the offensive coordinator, and I'm sure that's why he was here last year. So I think those two fight it out. I think there's a pretty good chance that on game day that one of them may suit up as opposed to Webb, at least in the earlier part of the season as he's growing into the professional system, particularly the professional system that McAdoo runs. But, yeah, they go 3 quarterbacks, and it's going to be, obviously, Eli. It's going to be Webb. You don't use a number 3 pick and then cut the guy. And so it comes down to Josh Johnson and or Geno. Possibly one of those two go on the IR, but why would you? That's just a waste of money.
Okay.
So, yes, 3 quarterbacks, and it's down to 2 guys fighting it out.
All right. So
spot.
let's go into the likelihood of players that are drafted contributing to the team this year. It's pretty obvious that the first 2 draft picks are going to contribute. Let's take a look at the last 3. And Brian, I'm going to stick with you. Do you think Adam Bisnawadi is going to compete for a job? Do you think Avery Moss will be in the rotation, or if he's going to play just special teams because Aquara and Odigizua would be the backups? And how much of a contribution do you see Wayne Gallman making as a running back in this offense? So just touch on those 3 players for me, please.
Well, let me go in the opposite direction where you want, and I'll start with Gallman. I think Gallman and Paul Perkins will get the lion's share of the carries for the Giants. It'll be a 2-headed monster. I love Richie's analogy. Who the heck was it? Derek Ward. Very similar kind of. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Somebody hit buttons.
Okay, guys. Something's buzzing on here. So I hello?
It's not me.
It's not me.
Not me either.
Somebody's touching phone button.
Not me either. So
Okay.
so we have a ghost
Okay,
on.
let's
A ghost
let's
caller.
move on. So I got Gallman. I think he'll get maybe about 40% of the carries. So he'll be a significant part of the offense, particularly in the red zone. So he was a terrific pickup. I liked him. I had him targeted, and we got him. So, that was a satisfying pick on day 3. Avery Moss, the Giants need another defensive end. I think the Odigizua era is coming to a close before he sent out those rather bizarre tweets. He hasn't developed it all, and a very big thing, and I keep track of this last year, even before JPP got hurt, I like to look at snap counts, and he wasn't getting any snap counts on the kick coverages, as opposed to Aquara was on basically all of the kick coverages. Now, if you're a backup defensive lineman and you're not out there playing on kick coverages, that means your team doesn't think a whole lot of you. He started out, doing some defensive tackle work on the 2016 version of the 4 aces. But after a while, he lost out on that, and Devin Kennard started taking that spot. So I kind of think that he's gone. With Rich, Avery Moss is a kind of a diamond in the rough player, but I think he can contribute. So I would think that he's probably going to make the squad. Adam Bisnawadi, we just talked about him a little bit. He's a big, tough kid. He is also a left tackle. He was highly thought of going into the draft. Kind of dropped a little bit stock-wise in 2016, mostly because of questions about his run blocking. But I think that maybe Dan Connor with the illness may have resulted in a drop-off for the running game at Pitt. But Bisnawadi, especially since he's a left tackle, he could very well make the roster. And in between the 3, he and the 2 top free agents that they signed, I got Chad Wheeler from USC and Justin Dunker, a guard from Tennessee State. You're probably going to get 2 out of 3 of those guys either making a team or at the bare minimum, ending up on the practice squad. So I think Bisnawadi will make the team.
Okay, Rich, I'm going to go to you next. I'm going to guess that you think Bisnawadi will make the team, and will he be the swing tackle if you agree with that?
Yes, I think that, that would be his most likely shot is to become the swing tackle, backing up especially Eric Flowers. He may not see a jersey that often because I think, he's really kind of competing with Bobby Hart a little bit. I'm kind of anticipating Bobby doesn't, although maybe I'm being a little presumptuous, that Bobby Hart's going to lose out to Fluker at right tackle. But, I think that Big Nawadi down the road, with a little more time, he might also swing into guard. I mean, I don't know if he'll be getting a game jersey this year, but I agree with Brian. I think he's going to make the team.
Brian, how many offensive linemen will they carry this year? 8?
Yeah, I think that they'll carry 8. Because that's what they've traditionally done, and it's what they did last year. And I'm going to make another point on that. There's a question of the quality of the talent on the Giants' offensive line. So, well, if your line's a little subpar talent-wise, that means your 7 and 8 guys aren't very good. Well, that would mean that your 9th guy isn't even that good. So why bother taking up a roster spot when you can beef up another unit on the team? So I think that they stay with 8. That's what they traditionally do. And there's nothing that indicates to me that they'll do anything otherwise.
Bob, would you agree with that? 8 players? 8 players, do you think?
Oh, I didn't think about that, but I think 2, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, 8 is how many offensive linemen they're going to carry. But unlike everyone else, I think they're going to have 4 tackles. And maybe one of the other guys thinks the 8 is going to include 4 tackles, too. I don't think they're going to have a swing guy at tackle. They have enough trouble getting any tackles. Mostly they have a bunch of guys that should be playing guard. I think they're going to, Bisnawadi will make the team, but only as a left tackle, and they're going to have another guy on the other side, who the loser of the Fluker-Bobby Hart competition, who is going to be Fluker, is going to get kicked inside, and it's going to be between him and the Canadian guy to see who's the interior line, the extra interior lineman.
Brett Jones.
Yeah, Jones. Because they can also, almost all of those guys can play guard. Bobby Hart played guard. Fluker got moved in by San Diego. And the only one is Bisnawadi that can't. Well, they probably could, but, he's very, he's not a prima ballerina. And I believe that he's a right tackle and not a left tackle. It's going to be between him and that guy Wheeler from USC, who's probably a better prospect because he has everything. He's extra rough, but he has everything that an NFL left tackle needs. He's very mobile, just doesn't have a whole lot of experience, and sometimes he just looks like he's wandering around out on the field. But they picked him because he's as a free agent, undrafted free agent, because he has the size, he has the athletic ability, he has everything that you want except the experience and the results. And these coaches are good coaches, and they know, or they think they know, when they've got a player that they can wring out NFL quality results. And I think they believe in him, and I think they're going to do it. He could play both sides. If he can make the team, he could be a swing tackle.
So for the audience, Chad Wheeler is an offensive tackle who was an undrafted free agent signed by the Giants from USC. And Bob, you mentioned the versatility of the backups. So you have Brett Jones, who could play center and guard, and you have Bisnawadi, who is a tackle, who may be able to play guard, but we definitely have Bobby Hart, who can play guard and can play tackle. So we have some versatility there. You also have Justin Pugh, who can play tackle and he can play guard, and we also have Rich Berg can play guard and tackle, and Fluker can play guard and tackle. So there's a lot of versatility. They could right. If they have some injuries, they could move some players around. Very good.
Right.
Very good. Rich, did we touch on you at all with Yeah, we did already. So, Rich, I want to go.
No, not on the offense. Oh, yeah, we did. Sorry.
We did, yeah. So, Rich, this is a good question for you. Name one or two key players that were passed over by the Giants in making their selections primarily in the first 3 rounds, or the first 3 rounds. Let's stick with that.
All right. Well, I'll tell you, and it's just kind of swinging back to what I was saying with Ingram. After they did Ingram, I looked at the next 10 picks. 3 cornerbacks were drafted, and I don't think after the Giants having pretty much 3 starters, I think it would have been unusual for them to draft a cornerback in round 1. A safety, again, not a real need position. 2 rushed outside linebackers better suited for the 3-4. 1 defensive end in Taco Charlton who went to the Cowboys, who, again, might have been someone the Giants might have considered, but again, with 2 high-paid free agents and manning the 2 defensive end spots, a little bit of an unusual pick. So that really left 3 interesting prospects to cast over. Njoku, who is, again, a tight end who is very athletic, similar to Ingram in that way, a little taller, a little bigger, might have the potential to be a better blocker, but isn't particularly better at this point. And Njoku is less polished as a route runner. There was Ramczyk, the offensive tackle, I think many people kind of would prefer. Myself, I was never a big Ramczyk fan because I just thought there were too many red flags. He only had 1 year at a high level, and in that 1 year he hurt his hip, and there's some real questions about his passion for the game. And the other interesting prospect that passed, and he went all the way down to San Francisco, is Reuben Foster, the middle linebacker out of Alabama. Pretty speedy, but and pretty good, very good, but there was a lot of reports after the draft that a lot of teams had taken him off their board because of his shoulder. He had some shoulder surgery, and there's some that question whether that was a successful surgery. In round 2, when they drafted Tomlinson, I think that everyone will point to, after Tomlinson, 2 really good offensive, the last 2 offensive tackle potential year 1 starters, and Deion Dawkins and Taylor Moton, they both came off the board shortly after the Giants drafted Tomlinson. So, by drafting Tomlinson, the Giants missed out on the last 2 offensive tackles that they could have taken. Beyond that, you had, in the 3rd round, you had Webb, and as I mentioned earlier, not a lot. I mean, there might have been a good opportunity to pick up a second-string cornerback maybe, or running back Foreman. He was probably pretty good, and there were a couple of defensive tackles with question marks. So really, after Webb, there wasn't. I don't see a huge, a great prospect that they passed over to draft Webb.
Okay, thank you, Brian. What players are on the hot seat now as a result of the selections that the Giants made in the draft? Who's on the fence right now that might lose a position, in your opinion?
Well, I think you may see Bobby Hart might be in some trouble on the offensive line as far as right tackle goes. Fluker is going to be on the Giants this year,
right?
Whether he beats out Hart or not. Hart is, I think he's played better than he's given credit for, and he's just a kid. But there may be some competition going there. If one of the free agents makes the squad, that would be the final 53. I would think that probably Bobby's the one who goes. Brett Jones is going nowhere. He's the only backup center on the team, so he's going to make the squad. They just signed John Jerry to what I thought was, the wrong contract, but they did, and it's a starter's contract, so he's going to play. They have to let Eric Flowers, sink or swim before they do anything else. And, of course, Fitchburg and Pugh are going to stay where they're at. So Bobby Hart, as far as offensive line goes, along some other lines, Will Tye. I'd be kind of surprised. Yeah. The Giants would probably have to keep 4 tight ends in order to keep Tye, and he just doesn't offer the kind of thing that you want out of a 4th tight end, which is usually a guy who's a really good blocker. Ingram's going to, eat up all of his pass catch opportunities. And I think Jarrell Adams is going to get more and more snaps.
Right.
Developing good blocker, and he was a pretty good pass receiver at South Carolina also. And of course, Ellison is, he's like a road grader. So Will Ty is another one that I think you may see an issue with. Davis Webb, we talked about the quarterback situation. Darkwa, I don't see Darkwa making the squad. And we're going to have too many running backs right there. You're going to have 3 to 4 that are going to get the stamps. Orleans may make the team because he's a pretty good, especially team player, but nonetheless, he's, in my mind, on a bubble. Remember, he got caught and then brought back on a more cap-friendly one-year deal. So I would expect something there. And I mentioned O'Diggy, Kevin, an issue also. I just don't see O'Diggy making. He's really shown nothing, and he's also, my indications, I talked about snap counts on specialty teams, kind of tells me that the team doesn't really see him as a long-term deal. And I would not be surprised at all if Nate Bear and Michael Lee Thompson, neither one of them make the team. Michael Lee Thompson, just because sooner or later you got to say, the guy's played about 1 quarter of football, keeps getting hurt. We don't know what we got there, but we can't
JT Thomas, you're talking about? JT Thomas, excuse me?
Well, I assume JT Thomas is a cap cut as soon as it becomes favorable. I can't possibly see him making it.
So you're talking about Nat Burhay, the safety, JT Thomas.
Ned Burhay, because of the concussion issue.
Right.
Now, I really liked it when he was drafted, but, they're starting to pile up. And he just, he comes back and he goes out on another one. And I just think for health purposes, the Giants are going to, fish and cut bait to use old terminology right there. So you may see somebody like Jadar Johnson, who was the free agent safety from Clemson, come in and take that 4th pick. Remember that Andrew Adams was an undrafted free agent last year and ended up starting 13 games. So, they're going to need a 4th safety if they don't go with Berry or Michael Lee Thompson. So I think both of those are on the bubble also. And, of course, JT Thomas, forget it. They're just waiting for the most favorable time to, how it's going to save them in a cap hit.
Okay. Hey, Bob, do you have a list of the undrafted free agents handy for yourself?
Yes.
I got a question for you. You mentioned Chad Wheeler.
Right.
I'm looking at Shane Smith, a fullback out of San Jose State. Take a look at this list, and there's a lot of players on this list, and they've been touted as a pretty good group of free agency signings. Which ones do you think are more likely to make the team as opposed to the rest of them that are just camp fodder or just bodies out there because they need to get snaps in?
You're right. That is a good question, and I think that keep an eye on Evan Schwann, the guy, defensive end from Penn State. They had a pretty good team this year, and he was a pretty good player on a pretty good team. Mm-hmm. So he's got what I call, he's within striking distance of being able to prove that he's worthy of an NFL roster. Some of these other guys I don't know. But Chad Wheeler, I think that was a good one. I think he should have been drafted. I know why he wasn't drafted. It was a good reason not to draft him, but he was definitely a primo undrafted rookie free agent. As far as Jessamine Dunker, he's issued a couple of tweets telling the rest of the league to watch out for him. So I figure he'll at least have enough gumption and energy to make some noise at camp. So I'm looking for him as a possibility. The other, and of course, Jadar Johnson. So you already talked about him. The defensive lineman Jaron Jones from Notre Dame. He's mostly I guess like Evan Schwann, he's probably within striking distance of NFL quality too, if he has a good camp. Other than that, anybody that's on here that's a wide receiver, although I've heard a lot of people touting one of these Travis Rudolph from Florida State, right, saying that was a great signing. It's going to be hard to make the team as a wide receiver. If anybody, I think you're going to find maybe 2 guys on this list that are wide receivers that are going to get cut by the Giants and immediately picked up and catch on somewhere else.
Well, I got a question for you. Could you just hit on something key there? with the wide receiver group being so, it's tough. So Dwayne Harris, is he on the cusp?
Oh, I did not put him. It depends who else they have, and I don't know these undrafted free agents, and I certainly don't know which one of them are going to get on the team, although at least two are probably will. Just the odds say that the chances are good of that. I'm not sure which of these guys was picked because they're special teams players. Some of these guys may be kick returners and punt returners. That would increase the likelihood that the Giants are at least trying to set up a scenario where they could release Harris, one of my favorite players, if they needed to. In other words, because a different returner plays a position of greater need for depth than wide receiver.
Because Harris is not just a return guy. He's great as a special team tackler and getting to the ball carrier too, right?
Right.
On punts.
Beg your pardon?
On punting, on punt returns. So he's out there. That's they get that kick in the coffin corner. He's the one downing it down, right?
Yeah. Believe me, he's one of my favorite players. It's going to be tough to get rid of him, but he's expensive. So if it comes down to money,
it would
he
be
might
Tavares King more than likely, right? That's on the cusp.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Rich, any comments on that? Do you have a guy in there in that free agent list that you love?
Well, I just want to. I'll go over a couple of my thoughts on. A lot of them have already been mentioned, but Chad Wheeler. I mean, you have Chad Wheeler and Jesse Dunker. Both of them were mentioned, by Jerry Reese before they even were officially announced. That's how excited he was. But the other thing you have to look at is, why weren't these two gentlemen? I mean, it was a bad draft in offensive lineman. How did they go through the entire draft without getting drafted? So Chad Wheeler, while he is very talented and could be a left tackle prospect, he did not test particularly well. He was sort of on the bottom percentiles in the combine. He also had a meltdown at some point where police had to come, and he was either on drugs or alcohol or intoxicated, and they had to use beanbag rounds to subdue him, and he had to do some mental counseling. Jessamine Dunker, he had some, there's some questions on his strength and questions on whether he has life skills, is what the scouts were questioning. One thing I would say about Jessamine Dunker, if I was him, the moment I got into camp, and we should watch when training camp goes, will they teach him to snap? Because, one of the guys that wasn't mentioned that I see possibly on the bubble is Brett Jones. If one of these guards learns how to snap, that's Brett Jones' ticket to staying on the team. And I'm not a huge Brett Jones fan. Not that I don't think he's got good character or is a decent player, but he gets hurt way too quickly. I mean, he hits 8 snaps and you get hurt, and that is tough when you're counting on him as your backup. So I think those guys, Jaron Jones, like that Bob talk, great guy, but the reports on him was he's a bit lazy, which he's got vine-like arms. If he puts it, the light goes on, he could be a real vine. Push Bromley out the door. Another guy that could, if Jones starts to get it, Bromley may be on the out. And Jared Jones, I liked him. As Brian said, he's a good safety. And Travis Randolph, if he finds that, if he can prove himself as a gunner, maybe, as you guys said, Dwayne Harris is out the door.
Well, the Giants did not pick a linebacker in the draft this year, and they only picked one player. They only signed one player in free agency. That's Calvin Munson, linebacker. Do you know anything about that player from San Diego State?
He's a better pass coverage and run block, although I don't even think his pass coverage. I've heard mixed reviews. I mean, some say he was pretty good and should have been drafted. Others said free agency, priority free agent is pretty much where he's at. I mean, I don't think he scored particularly well on the college Pro Football Focus, their college version. I do have heard that. For those who value those scores, that's really all I've really heard about him. And it's possible that J.T. Thomas doesn't get cut. Maybe they are planning to keep him.
Well, I got a question that I kind of touched on with Patty Traynor last week, and I didn't really ask the question. I wanted to see if she would comment on it because I asked if Odighizuwa was out of position. Do you think Oh, well, Ziggy Zua could be a Sam linebacker.
When he was coming out, there was some talk, and they did do drills, and he showed he could be, he was one of those prospects that they said could be a rush linebacker in a 3-4 or a defensive end on a 4-3 team. So, I always find that the rush backer is kind of like a little bit of a Sam backer in the 4-3. So it's a potential, although I believe they have a gentleman, I don't remember his name off the top of my head. He was from Notre Dame. He was out of football for a year that they had swung off defensive end and was playing him at linebacker last year in camp. I see him more like that defensive end.
Didn't hear you, Rich. Put the phone. You're fading out.
Yes, I'm just trying to, that there was a gentleman from Notre Dame that they had from last year that I think that, unfortunately, while you have a good point about O'Diggy going there, I think that, I'm sorry, I got his name, Ishaq Williams.
Okay.
Ishaq Williams.
I think that, if he wasn't on the roster, then maybe, they would try moving O'Diggy, but with Ishaq Williams already sort of in that role, I don't see them making that move.
In coverage on a tight end, do you think he can handle the coverage of a tight end?
He's got pretty good speed. Again, he didn't do a lot of that in college, and it is a skill that's got to be learned. So,
so
after
the
2
answer
years,
is probably no.
No.
Yeah. Okay, Brian, your thoughts on this?
Well, first off, when O'Diggy was in college, he was considered a run-stop guy, not a pass rusher. So he hasn't learned the trade, and he's not living up to it. I just don't think that he's going to make the team. Between the injury problems and the bad tweets and everything else, the lack of production, sometimes you just got to let a guy go and move on. As far as the other undrafted free agents, the Giants seem to sign a lot of pretty good, highly rated free agents. Chad Wheeler was considered a 4th round, and Justin Mendonca a 4th round. Jaron Jones, I should say, nose tackle from Notre Dame, was considered a 5th round pick. He may be a player who makes the squad. I forgot to mention, Brownlee may be on the bubble this year. I think he'll probably make the team, but I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't. Jaron Jones is a monster of a man. The Giants like Robert Thomas. So the other defensive tackle, if you remember last year, they signed him, then he was sick for weeks. They kept him on the active roster. So there's something about him they like his game.
I have a comment about that. I don't want to interrupt you until you're done, but I have a comment about that. Everybody made a good case for Tomlinson over picking an offensive lineman in the 2nd round, and I agree. And I can give one more reason for Tomlinson is because he can also back up Snacks. They need a backup for Snacks, and the guy you're talking about is the backup for Snacks.
Sure he is. Just back up one guy.
That's right, but
and
he's bigger than Tomlinson. He's got a lot of sand in his pants, and that's why they kept him on the roster. Don't forget, anybody can get injured, including our best lineman. And if he gets injured, they got to have somebody to put there. Well, Tomlinson actually played.
One of the things with Tomlinson is that he's lighter than his strength because he was a wrestler.
Yep.
If you looked at the film of him as a wrestler, I'm not kidding you. If you look at Hankins looked 30 pounds overweight.
Watch the Alabama.
Tomlinson looks about 0.2, pounds overweight. So there's a little bit of difference there. You're getting a lot more out of him.
Watch some of the Alabama game tapes from last year.
I watch Alabama's every single game.
Tomlinson actually played against 2 guys a lot.
Right, you did.
Okay.
Yep.
And that's why I think they're going to probably not need Thomas they didn't. I don't know if they liked him or not, but they sure did activate him every time, and and I think that's why. And I think they probably he's going to go unless he's improved or whatever. Because I think if you have two guys, it depends. It actually depends on the lower guys. Because it depends where they have better second line players. Okay, if they're better, if he's a better player than, let's just say, I don't know. Here I'm looking at the roster. Bromley, I guess, or Jordan Williams. He's also on the roster. It depends where they think they have a second tier player that's strong. If Bromley's the strong guy, then they can get rid of Thomas because Tomlinson can back up Harrison. You see, but if Thomas is a better player than Bromley, then they need somebody else, like maybe one of the free agents, like the guy from Notre Dame, Jaron Jones, like you said, to be the second.
Yeah, Bob, they won't carry any more than four.
Four, but they need two or three that can play each position.
Well aware of that part of it. And Thomas, I think, he was the backup nose tackle, and Bromley was the backup three tech guy. And they really had three guys that could play the one tech guy in that thing. But I'm not saying it's going to happen. I said the possibility is that it could. Yeah. And Jaron Jones, he's a mountain of a man. And like everybody we've been taking from Notre Dame or Giants draft, they're like, 20, 21-year-old, they're still babies, and they develop into good pros and can last for a long time. Yeah. I think the Giants get good free agents because they have a reputation of the free agents making their team. Just last year, Andrew Adams made the team and started 13 games.
That's a real point.
Romeo Wira came in when JPP went up, but he was getting a lot of time before that, and Roger Lewis turned into a great gunner. He was the number 3 or 4 receiver on the team, caught a couple touchdowns. Well, when other free agents were already mad because they didn't didn't get drafted, looking for a team to hang on to, they said, "Well, I can go to the Giants because they're going to give me a fair shot on this thing." And that may be why you always seem to do pretty well with free agents.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a good point. Oh, you can make an argument for the reverse, that a free agent that felt slighted by not being drafted would look for the worst possible team to try to catch on with because he might figure his chances are better. You know what I mean? Like the team with the least depth would give you a shot too. So there's an argument on both sides, but I agree with Brian.
So, Rich, I have a question for you. No fullback. They're carrying 3 quarterbacks. Are they going to sacrifice the fullback position again this year? This guy Shane Smith have a shot? They're going to bring someone else in, or is it Ellison? Who's going to fill the role of fullback or are they not going to have one?
Well, I'm anticipating that Ellison is going to be the fullback. He played a little fullback up with the Vikings and in college. He's kind of that tight end fullback hybrid, and as you said, we're carrying. If we weren't carrying 3 quarterbacks, then that free agent that you mentioned, the tight end would be a good option. Nice to have one in here, and perhaps he's being carried into camp just in case something happens to Ellison should he get hurt. I don't think that that Ben McAdoo really wants to have to go in again. You remember last year, the 2 fullbacks got hurt. They didn't have so they were forced not to have a fullback, and they lost a good amount of their playbook. So I think Ellison's their first choice, but the other one sort of in case of injury break glass, he'll be the best. He could fulfill that role.
So Alalad's NFL scouting services actually. I'm looking at their depth chart for the Giants, and they have Ellison listed as a fullback, and then as Ed pointed out, this guy Shane Smith, who I don't know much about, from San Jose State, except that he's a solid, built well and could play fullback. That's a set. That's the competition for Ellison in camp. So the other guy who's possible that nobody's mentioned yet is Sean Drawn, and Draughn.
Right. Yes, they
And
signed
I
him.
mentioned how to spell his name because it doesn't sound like that. And also, nobody's mentioned him. He's on the roster, and I believe he is big enough. I'm not. I don't know what the Giants think, but to me, he's big enough to attempt to play fullback. So they have three guys.
One thing I wanted to add about Shane Smith is that he threw up some 30-some-odd on the bench press. I mean, he was in Eric Flowers' territory, only at 244 pounds.
Wow. Hey, maybe that's the guy. I mean, you need two because one of them's bound to get hurt, and if they don't, then you just have to cut one of the guys, and they're not going to cut Ellison. So Shane Smith went, but maybe the practice squad, or who knows. Not every team uses a fullback, so they can be careful. Maybe can let him become a free agent without losing him. Who knows?
Good point.
Well, to make a point here is we always talk about the Giants running Green Bay offense. Well, Green Bay carries two fullbacks.
That's true.
Yeah. But depends who plays special teams.
They're a very, very intricate part of their offense. They just don't use them as running, as lead blockers, but they run and they throw to their fullbacks. So I wouldn't be surprised, and I was going to mention this until I did it. Shane Smith is the only fullback on the roster right now. Yeah, he sure is a big, strong guy. He was undrafted, was probably going to go undrafted, but fullbacks rarely do get drafted. They're like long snappers now. But he was actually the 8th highest rated fullback in the draft. So there's a possibility that he does make the squad. Ellison is not a fullback. He does some H-back stuff. He may line up in the backfield, but he's a blocking tight end more than anything else, although it may mix and match. He's the opposite of what Will Johnson was last year, the guy they signed last year. He was a fullback who did some tight end. And there was talk, and I haven't heard anything on it recently, that they may be interested in re-signing him again. I don't know if that's going to happen or not. That was his own tweets talking about that sort of thing.
And if they need to free up a roster spot, they could. Evan Ingram could really fulfill a role of a wide receiver or a tight end, so that could be a way to free up a roster spot.
Yeah. And like Bob said, Shane Smith could go to the practice squad, and he chances of him being picked up would be slim. And when they want to call him back, what would they say to him, guys? Shane, come back, Shane.
Shane, come home.
Yep.
Pop needs you. Okay, so what else is missing from the team right now? What key ingredients are they missing? I know we've talked about it on the board that they may be lacking a bruising 1 yard, be able to get that touchdown, at the goal line, kind of a running back. What are we missing on this team?
Backup cornerback, fourth cornerback.
Fourth cornerback,
or maybe a
good
fifth
one.
cornerback, depending on how you look at it.
Yeah, they're going to need 5 cornerbacks there, so there's some work to be done there. As far as the bruising running back, did anybody watch the national championship game with a Saul Gallman running through that tremendous Alabama defense? He is a short yardage guy amongst other things. So I think we're going to see it on that. So I agree. We probably, we'll see what's going to happen with the offensive line. We certainly need help at quarterback. I think they need a safety, and long term, especially as linebacker. We could use 1 or 2 players on that. What do you think, Rich?
I think that like I said, power back. Blount would be an interesting prospect. I forget when the cutoff is. Somewhere, I think, in June. I think the Giants are mindful. They don't want to sign too many players because they want to try to get a comp pick for Hankins, loss of Hankins. But Blount, if he lasts, might be a good power back. And you know what? It depends on Flowers. They may, how he does in spring. They may be in the need for a starting left tackle, someone like a Ryan Clady or a Dunlap, who might at least be a serviceable left tackle for a season.
Yeah, I have to disagree with Brian. I don't think Gallman's going to prove. I know he fulfilled that role for Clemson, but I'm not so sure about Gallman as a get me the yard on the goal line type of guy. I think that's why when we discussed the issue on the board there about grabbing a power running back, Blount, I said, yeah. I think they really need a guy like that. Unless that fullback is the kind of guy that can lug the ball, but then they don't have anybody to block for him. So I really think that when Brian said Dart was not going to make the team, I can almost, injuries aside, I can almost guarantee it he's not going to make the team. Because if it's a choice between, they don't need him anymore. Gallman is like a better version of Darkwa. Plus he can block. And so I think that they're missing a guy that has the power of a fullback, but the ability of a halfback to run behind a fullback and to score touchdowns. They're missing that.
Okay, Brian, you had a couple of topics you wanted to introduce. So anything that we didn't touch on already, what do you want to touch on?
Well, first of all, let's take a look at the other teams in the NFC East and how they drafted. I take a look at the Cowboys. Taco Charlton is a defensive end, and I think it's a really solid pick for them. They needed a pass rushing defensive end. He's a good all-around right defensive end. Other than that, they seem to be chasing their own tail, trying to fill out their secondary. They took 3 cornerbacks and a safety. The best of the bunch is Chidobe Awazui. I hope I pronounced that correctly, from Colorado. He's a nice player. Jordan Lewis, cornerback from Michigan. How many Michigan guys went in the draft? About 1,000, especially everybody on their defense. But the other two are late-round picks, and they lost their whole secondary. So Dallas still has a lot of problems on the defensive side of the ball. You can tell how a team is going to look at it from themselves by how they react in the draft. And they only took 2 offensive players, and both of them were mid to late-round wide receivers. So Dallas certainly sees themselves as a defensive team. And the Eagles, they took Derek Barnett in the first round, but Connor Barwin's gone. They didn't take the option on Marcus Smith. Benny Logan's gone. Bo Allen, the defensive tackle, has a pec injury. We know how that works out with their history with Will Beatty. They did sign Timmy Jernigan, but I think they're not as strong on the defensive line. And the number 2 pick, Sidney Jones from Washington, he tore his Achilles at his pro day, so he's probably not going to play at all. They also want, some in the secondary sort of thing. They did pick up Donnell Pumphrey, a running back from San Diego State. He's a Ricky Sproles clone. Other than that, situational player here or there. They haven't greatly addressed their wide receiver. Matt Collins, North Carolina, kind of a tall guy. Sheldon Gibson, a little scat back from West Virginia. Interestingly, they took 3 players from West Virginia. Washington, they went heavy on defense. Defensive end, linebacker, cornerback, strong safety, cornerback, but they were not a good defensive team. So they kind of, dressed on that, but they lost 2 big wide receivers, and they didn't take any wide receivers in the draft. They did take another tight end, even though they still got Reed Davis and Niles Paul. So it sounds to me like the other teams had, more glaring needs and are looking to fill them on a long-term basis. But all in all, I think the off-season, if you add up the free agency, re-signing your own players, and through the draft, I think the Giants are better than any one of the other 3 divisional rivals. What say you, Ed, or Rich, or Bob?
Rich, you go ahead.
All right. I think that what the last part you say is very important, Brian. I like to, especially for the other teams, because we may not follow them as closely in the off season. You got to look at both free agency and the draft together and how the teams have done. And I think the Cowboys had a pretty good draft, but the problem is that they pretty much have to, they lost so much in free agency that it was just sort of if everyone they hit on all those picks, they will be treading water talent-wise, and if that. So, the Cowboys, they will be lucky to be as talented as they were last season. On top of that, they got a little bit of Father Time nipping at their heels with Jason Witten. The Eagles, I really see them as a team to beat this year. I mean, they lost a couple free agents, but they did sign a few free agents. Barnett is a little bit of a boom or bust. I mean, he didn't test well at the Combine, but he was very productive. If he proves to be a good end, hey, that's great. Sidney Jones, as you said, he's a red shirt, so his impact won't be all that much. Darnell Humphrey, I know everyone's comparing him to Sproles, but I actually see him more as Dave Meggett type of clone. I think he has more of that Dave Meggett third down return type guy. I think, they also picked up a couple of cornerbacks to upgrade their weakest position. As for the Skins, I know a lot of the people in the draft community are raving that they got a real steal in Jonathan Allen. He had some questions about his arthritic shoulders, and he also did not test well at all at the Combine. I know some fans like to dismiss the Combine as just the underwear Olympics, but, and for a lot of players, the Combine measurements really don't mean a whole lot, or for even scouts. It's when you're on one extreme or the other, and he tested very poorly athletically, enough that, a lot of teams may look, I believe that is why he dropped. Not that he was a steal, but he dropped because he tested just that poorly. But they did pick up a nice running back. Samji Kareem was someone that power back that I was kind of hoping the Giants were going to be able to snatch. They picked him up in the fourth round. And the other thing I was kind of surprised with the Skins is they lost their two starting their two starting wide receivers and Garcon and Jackson. And in return, they signed Terrell Pryor from the Browns, and that was it. And I was kind of expecting that they would take a wide receiver earlier than they did, and I was a little surprised about that. So, I think the Skins might have gotten a little better. I really think the Eagles were the ones that have helped themselves the most this offseason.
Brian, I got to give you an apology. I never read your questions because I figured that you would just handle them, your topics. But then I'm looking at them, that there's like 3 of them here that I already brought up already. So I apologize for that. It wasn't intentional. I just want you to know that.
I got it. That's cool.
Okay.
I pretty much went through the different draft picks through the rounds, and we've done that. And so, we touched on pretty much everything that I wanted to touch on, other than doing the draft grades.
So, Bob, do you have any comments? I mean, I already commented on this topic.
I'll do 30 seconds. I'd like to combine what Rich and Brian just said. Rich said that every NFC East team had a good draft. I agree. I think the Cowboys did good. The Redskins did better, and the Eagles did best. But Brian made a good point. It's real question of what's the overall result, considering the guys they lost, the free agents they got, how well they fit, and all that. And I agree that it comes out different. Even though everybody had a good draft, the Giants improved their team, and they started out with probably the best team. And they improved their team more than the other 3 NFC East rivals in total when you look at everything that's been done since the last game of the season.
Okay. Brian, what other topics you want to hit on?
Well, we touched on the free agency, and that was one of the bigger things that I wanted to talk about. We've talked about re-signing our players. We touched on that just a little bit. I do want to ask just the top 2 picks in the draft, their effect on their respective units. I'm going to go to Rich on this. And Evan Ingram, do you think the Giants should have went another direction in round 1, or do you like the pick of Evan Ingram, and how do you see the Ingram affecting the Giants' offense in 2017?
All right. I think I kind of laid out a little bit that I didn't see a perfect match of need and value in round 1. But, as far as a role and his impact, I see it almost sort of. I think a good parallel would be Eli Apple last year. I mean, the Giants, raised some eyebrows when they drafted Eli Apple. They're saying, well, you already have two starting quarterbacks. How is he going to be an impact? And I see Ingram in a similar role. I see this as a chance to play some more two tight end sets. I think that, even Brandon Marshall, should he stay healthy, he is 33. Do you really want him to take every offensive snap, or would you like someone who's got a similar size that you can sub in? Because I think he can line up wide too, and I think that he's going to be the guy that can give Marshall a breather. And you know what? And when they play those two deep safety roles that seemed to stymie Eli in the offense last year, it seemed like Shepard couldn't take the top off or stress those two safeties. I think Ingram is going to be that guy who can stress those safeties and make them kind of pull away from that more conservative two high safety looks. So I think he'll have a pretty good impact. As far as Tomlinson's impact, I think his impact is going to be about preventing the Giants' defense from getting a lot worse. Hankins had an important role in that defense. That's why they gave him a very a good contract offer, which is kind of surprising because they already had spent a lot of money on the other three positions, so it was kind of surprising. But I think that shows just how important that they felt that Hankins' role in that team was, that they were going to put themselves in a little bit of cap jeopardy by offering him a big contract. So I think Tomlinson is going to be a perfect replacement and be able to do everything Hankins did, and it's going to be a critical role. So I think that was a very important draft pick for the Giants for their defense not to get worse.
Very good. Ed, you go next.
Well, I love the Evan Ingram pick. I love it because they picked the best player available and not at a position of need. And I really believe that in the first round you need to do that. And everything that Rich said, I completely agree with. Just any tight end that has 4.4 speed at his size is going to be a mismatch. He's going to be a nightmare for defenses. Dalvin Tomlinson, I like the pick a lot. I think he's got versatility. I think he can be the one technique. He could be the three technique. I think he's a guy that could be in there for 3 downs. But I also have some reservations because I believe the defensive tackle position is a player that needs to develop. And I don't know, he may not be strong enough. I don't know that he is, or if they got him on a weight program, like right away. I also think that it's a little different in the pros, and I think that they have to work him in. So I think Jay Bromley and Robert Thomas are players that are going to have to be in there, and they're going to have to take snaps. They really don't have another veteran presence that they could put in there. So I see Jay Bromley as the starter, and I see them working in Tomlinson. However, you know what? I would be thrilled if this kid gets it and he can play from day one. We'll have to see. We'll have to see what happens with that. Bob?
Okay, I want to say in response to what Rich said, I think the reason for the more than generous offer to Big Hank was because of the doubts about the backup players, and also they follow it up with a round 2 pick. Where they could have tried for an offensive lineman, although I didn't like, I like Dawkins as the number 1 offensive lineman in the draft, but not necessarily as a tackle, just as a guy likely to succeed. I think Tomlinson, they lucked out that he was there because he was somebody they wanted to take anyway, and it was a lucky thing because, like Rich said, the defense would not, with Bromley as the starter, I think the defense is not quite as good as last year. He's still pretty easy to move for one guy. And so I was glad to see Tomlinson picked, and when I read his story, I was even more glad to be a Giants fan, and I'll gladly root for him. As far as Ingram goes, I agree with Ed. he was the best player there. Like Rich proved by looking at the guys taken after him. Those guys are no way those guys, anybody that was taken except maybe Reuben Foster. And the next 10 guys taken after the Giants pick, none of them is going to contribute to their team more than Ingram. He's going to be out there in crucial situations. And although he's going to, I do offer this one caveat. He's going to have to learn the offense, and I'm sure he can. So it might take a while, and he might not be a starter at first, or if not a starter, he may never be a starter. But in any event, they're not going to put him out there until he knows all the options and all of his blocking assignments, and he can execute them. So it's just a question of, will it be starting at the beginning of the season, in my mind, or is it going to take till about the bye week before he starts playing a bigger role? But once he does, assuming they can be fortunate enough to make the playoffs again, I think every Giants fan is going to be glad to see Ingram out there playing for the Giants in the playoffs.
So,
Okay.
do you want to go into the graphs, the picks now, or do you want to? Do you have something to add to that, Brian?
Yeah, I'm going to add to that, Ed. First of all, I think the Giants wanted Ingram pretty much from the get-go. They knew they had to up their offensive firepower. The reality was that O.J. Howard was never going to be there when they picked, and the best position to upgrade the team was at tight end. And between Njoku and Evan Ingram, well, a couple of things there. The big knock on Ingram is that he's a quote-unquote not a blocker. Well, he's not an in-line blocker, but he's actually a very, very effective downfield blocker. I mentioned earlier, I got the stat from Kerry that he had 59 knockdown blocks last year, which is quite impressive. And the other thing is, Njoku is not really a blocker either. He's got a body that he may be able to build the frame out where he will become one, but he's not any more of a blocker now than Ingram is. And another thing that stuck out with me with Njoku, I got this stat reading through one of the scouting reports. About half of his offensive production as a receiver, both receptions and yards, came on passes that he caught behind the line of scrimmage. Pretty much a lot of bubble screen stuff and screens and things of that nature. Really not what the Giants were looking for out of a tight end, or like I like to call him an offset tight end, where you're not really a slot man. You're a couple yards off the tackle, maybe lining up a little H-back-ish. So Ingram will start from day one, as far as the tight end goes, in my book. And I think it'll have a heck of an impact on the offense. One thing that stuck out was watching the other teams draft. All three of the teams in the NFC East drafted strong safeties. It tells me that they all see that they're going to have problems covering tight ends. And I don't think they did it because the Giants drafted Ingram. I think they did it because all of the teams have really good tight ends. They're going to have to be able to cover them. Cowboys, Eagles, and Washington all have great tight ends. And their units are, that's like the bread and butter of the receiving corps. So I think that at this point that says to me that they think that the safeties aren't very good at covering tight ends. And so I can see Ingram having a heck of a time on that. As far as, I don't know, Bob or somebody said that, the question that if Dalvin Tomlinson is strong enough, take a look at the video of him pinning a guy in 9. Yeah. That's one strong man. I think that the quote-unquote not strong enough thing comes from, again, that he could weigh more because he as a wrestler, he doesn't carry a whole lot of body.
He was playing 285, yeah. He was wrestling.
To 285 he was wrestling. And,
yeah, and 25 pounds smaller than he.
Yeah, throwing people around like rag dolls. And I really, like I said, Alabama's my team. I watch him every week. This guy is a really good football player. And I do see him starting from the get-go.
Brian, he might be the smartest player to ever play football for the Giants.
Oh my God, yeah. I mean, he went out, he got offered an academic scholarship from Harvard. And he graduated in 5 semesters with a degree in finance. So everything about him I really like.
I have a next door neighbor, Brian, whose daughter went to Alabama. She graduated last year. And I went down and I said, the Giants picked a guy and he majored in finance. That's easy, right, in Alabama because they have a lousy program. And she got really angry at me and gave me a half hour's earful about the fact that they have a strong program in finance, and finance is one of the hardest majors, and it is.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and believe me, this guy must be he's probably going to go to Wall Street, so he's so lucky to come to New York. He'll probably go to Wall Street and make a lot more money than playing football eventually.
Howie Cross was Dean's List finance major at Alabama, graduated in 3 years.
Yeah.
Howie's a pretty smart guy.
Yeah.
So I like Tomlinson a real lot. I think he's going to be an impact player for the defense from the get-go. And I'm very, very happy with that pick. At this point, Ed, do we want to grade the Giants draft?
Yeah, because, we're getting into an hour and a half now, so I think we have to wrap it up.
Yeah,
So
sure.
why don't you start out, Brian? Go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to give the Giants at this point, and it's not because I'm a homer. As I mentioned before, they picked the players that I was looking for up front. So I'm going to give them an A-, and it's only because of the Davis Webb pick. Not that I don't think that he's a good player and may well become a very good quarterback in the NFL. I just think it was a year too early, and we may have been able to use that pick for something else that high up. But otherwise, I give them an A-, and I give their whole off season an A. I mean, they started out with a really good team, and it had some things that needed to be addressed, and they pretty much addressed all of them. Next.
That'll be Rich.
I'll go because it's fast.
Okay.
I agree with Brian almost to a T. My minus is not because of the quarterback. It's because I think that Moss and maybe Biz, neither of them might be able to make the team because the team is too good. It depends on Odigizua and there's other defensive ends we didn't even talk about that are going to make some noise and may keep him off the team. I'm done.
Rich?
I have a very similar grade. I mean, I guess mine is a B+. I'm just not a big A guy for a draft. I mean, there's still a lot, drafts are still a bit of an unknown or crapshoot. But off-season, I'd say an A, like Brian said. I think between what we added in off-season and what we added in draft, this team is better than the one that left Green Bay last year.
All right. I look at it just from the draft as a B, and the reason for that is because of the Davis Webb pick, who I think is a good pick, but I think it held us back possibly picking another position. I think what they did in free agency was very good, bringing in Brandon Marshall, a tall, physical receiver, bringing in Ellison, a blocking tight end who could also catch the ball. So I think combined it would be like an A- total. But I think that they really are taking a chance at offensive tackle. And I think that they really have to take a good hard look at who that fourth cornerback would be. And they do have free agents that they're working with on that. And then I'm looking at the backup safety. So we do have a very good, strong safety in Landon Collins. And then we have Darian Tomlinson, right? And Thompson.
Yes.
And he only played a few games, and he looked good, but we don't really know what's going to happen with him. And if there was some luck in there, he looks like a good player. But who's going to be the third or the fourth safety? And I think the third safety position becomes important. They don't have a Leon Hall. And I look at that Green Bay game when DRC went out and how that position was exposed. So I do have concerns that they didn't cover all of their bases, but I do have confidence in them. I think that if they strongly feel that what they have on the team in the offensive line, that they're going to get through this season, I feel confident in them. You know what? There's accountability that goes with this. For them not to bring in a free agent tackle, and they're going to trust Flowers. They really have to know that he's going to do the job. And I guess it's going to come down to Fluker at right tackle or Hart. I do question, the last two picks as to whether they could start or not, or they're going to be rotational players, or so it's really a question mark. So I do rate them as an A minus. Any final thoughts, guys? Start off with Brian.
Well, it kind of wraps it all up. Just giving the grade, we talked about the draft with the free agency, the team evaluations, overall upgrade in talent. I like it. I think they're a better team than they were. They came out of Green Bay, and they were a damn good team at that point. So let's see what happens. But I'm very much looking forward to it.
Okay, Bob, your final thoughts?
Everything Brian said, and I will add, but I think that their records are going to be 10-6 this year instead of. I just think they have a much harder schedule, and unless they're really, really top-notch team, it's going to be tough to match that 11-5.
That's a good point, and there's a lot of competition. I think our division is going to be stronger also. Besides the Dallas Cowboys, you have the Eagles and Washington. Did a lot of work on defense. Rich, your final thoughts?
I was just going to address, you had mentioned some of the concerns that defensive back depth, and just a couple players that I think we want to keep an eye on. And one of them is cornerback Michael Hunter. We watched him in camp last year, and I thought he looked pretty good. I thought he was a little young, and a year of seasoning would help, and they kept him on the practice squad. I wouldn't be surprised if he looks much better this year and could be your fourth cornerback. And at safety, kind of a little during the real quiet, those street free agents, they brought in Raheem Moore. At one time, he was considered like the second best free agent available at free safety. He was signed by the Houston Texans. It didn't work out. I don't know whether he got happy with that money or what, but he had a couple good years in Denver, and you know what? He could prove to be a nice depth type safety for the team.
Okay. Rich, when do you think we're coming back on podcast again? When would you like to get back on? You want to do it after minicamp, during minicamp? You want to do it before training camp, during training camp? What do you want to do with this?
Well, we could probably do one after the mini camps. We'll get a little idea how these players are going to be used. I mean, we've kind of been speculating on how they're going to use these guys, so we might have some good stuff then. Okay,
that sounds good. All right, so we'd like to thank you for listening into our podcast. You can pick up our website at giantsfans.net. You can pick us up on Twitter at Big Blue Huddle, Facebook, The New York Giants Big Blue Huddle. So on behalf of Bob, Brian, Rich, and myself, we want to thank you for listening into our podcast, and we'll see you right after minicamp. Go Giants.